I got into a discussion online recently in regards to Sweet Baby Incorporated's involvement with Team Cherry, which means they are involved with Silksong. And a lot of people were like lamenting the downfall of Hollow Knight, like, oh no, Team Cherry has gone woke, completely unaware apparently that Hollow Knight was woke already. Like, this is something I suppose needs to be brought up and addressed because how many beloved properties were always woke? Right. Like this is something I've been thinking about for a long time. I've been wanting to talk about like Lord of the Rings, like the film adaptations and Star Wars and like Blazing Saddles and like Starship Troopers. Like there have been a lot of instances of like older media, stuff from the 90s and before that would I would definitely say are pushing woke agendas. Right. Like that is something that needs to be talked about more. Like wokeness is not a new thing. Is kind of my view on it. But with Hollow Knight specifically, it really does feel as if people don't understand the implications of the lore of Hollow Knight, right? Specifically, like what the flower means and like what it symbolizes and stuff like that. So, like to recap, when it comes to Hollow Knight, like you are a non-binary protagonist going through the depths of Hallownest to try and destroy the Dreamers and stop the plague from spreading, right? Destroying the radiance so you can bring peace to all the land, right? By the way, like you think I'm joking about the non-binary thing. I've had this discussion too. The knights are the vessels are canonically genderless, right? They are neither male or female, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense because like, the knight is pretty masculine looking and like everyone just treats him like a normal swordsman or whatever. Like, like it's my typical thing, like in regards to this kind of thing. Like you see that design and you're just like, yeah, that's a him, right? That's a he, right? Like it's technically an it, but like I think the character that falls in love with the knight, Bretta, like refers to it as a they, which is that in and of itself like the woke aspect, right? You never ever refer to something an individual as like they. Okay, like you default to the masculine pronoun or you default to it, right? Like I know like Team Cherry wanted to push this idea that the knights were genderless, right? But in that like if you're gonna do that, like don't have a character fall in love with the knight. An explicitly female character fall in love with the knight. An object that exists to like contain the plague. But anyway, um, like my thing though, like that's not really a big issue though. Like again, like I'm not bemoaning Team Sherry for having the decision to have the knight not be male or female, right? That in and of itself, like the way they handled it is tasteful. It's not really propaganda-ish. Like most people don't even see the knight as non-binary in the sense like the agenda pushes it. So like again, that in and of itself is not an issue. It's technically true, but like it's not really like that big of a deal. And like, everyone always refers to the knight as it, so it's not really an issue. But like the real issue though, and I think is a lot more blatant like the one where they got a lot more brazen with this is that they decided to do the Fallout New Vegas thing, where they hid a lesbian quest line late in the game. It's something that nobody will ever discover unless you go through like everything in the game and like try to accomplish every task and do everything. Um, and if you do it, like there's a very strong chance that you won't understand what you're seeing, right? Because it's very like vague about what's actually happening. But essentially, that like one of the knights of the five knights that guarded Hallownest and bygone days, like fell in love with like the traitor lord's daughter, and they had like a lesbian mantis relationship. Like they really took like eating each other to like the next level, right? Like uh, so, so yeah, of course, like the mantis dies. Of course, like I don't know if like she literally ate her or not, but that's the story I'm going with. Um, and then like the game tries to play it off like it's some tragic romance, right? Obviously, it's not, but well, we don't really need to like expound on that. So like the idea behind the flower, right? The pale, delicate thing with an unusual great power. Like the flower has like lots of really unusual properties, right? If you take it to like the end game, like not even the end game, like the super post like final boss area, like the Land of Dreamers, right? You can trigger like a highly special ending in which the flower somehow like eliminates the plague or something. Like it does something, right? The flower has more power than anything else in all of Hellenist. Like the power of love. And of course, like because the flower is like primarily associated with lesbians, the idea is that like love conquers all becomes lesbian love conquers all, right? The idea is like to associate lesbianism with like actual pure romantic love between a man and a woman, which is of course like disgusting woke shit that really needs to be condemned more often, right? So again, like this is the kind of thing you won't notice unless you like first of all, you have to go through all the steps to like make this happen to begin with. And then like if you see it happening, like you have to understand the implications of it. Like I don't think the vast majority of the player base like have actually accomplished the task of like what it takes to like unlock this ending, right? It's something that like only like like maybe 0.01% of like the player base is done. Like it's not something you do unless you're like the hardest of the hardcore and have to like do everything in Hollow Knight, right? I haven't done it yet. But like um when you and again, even if you do it, you won't necessarily understand like the implications, right away. But that is the point. Like the idea is that like lesbian love conquers all, which kind of like leads me into like my feelings about Silksong. And like one of the reasons I'm so concerned about it, like if Team Cherry is being funded by the ESG system, it's very possible that Silksong is going to be pushing more aggressive woke nonsense. I do think it's very possible they could expound on this theme. They could have some of these characters return, right? Like I think Sabethian just kind of disappears. What is her name? Zanat? I can't remember. Like the giant moth thing, the morning lady or whatever. Yeah, like she could theoretically come back and she could play a major role and like it's possible, and I would be very loath to see this happen. It could be possible that like Hornet herself could be forced into like a lesbian relationship to like to push the woke agenda, because like you know how this goes, and like when it comes to like these strong female action heroes in these games now, right? Like that is the trope, is to force the strong female action hero into like a lesbian relationship, because of course they can't be straight. Like that never happens at all, right? Yeah. So like we've seen this happen with like Aloy, and Lara Croft is rumored to be going this direction. Like I do think that is like my big concern with Silksong at this point, is that I do think they are going to try and make Hornet a lesbian. And of course this isn't coming out of nowhere, right? But like I've seen like fan art of her doing that and people like trying to call it ridiculous, and I really don't think it is. Honestly, like I do think there is a very strong possibility that they try and do this, right? Simply out of like a desire to try and normalize it among gamer culture. But I'm very, very interested in seeing like what the pushback to this is going to be, because I do think, I myself personally am very, very, very sick of like the fetishization of lesbians, right? Like real lesbians don't, lesbians don't exist, period. But like if they did, you wouldn't like fetishize them like this, right? Like the attempts at like glamorizing something that's like clearly reprehensible and evil, and goes against nature and is very disrespectful to both women and men, right? Like it really just does a disservice to the brand, the creators. It really does a disservice to the characters and the fans, I think, because honestly, it'll be really interesting comparing Hornet, who most people assume to be like a like just a simple action girl, like just be forced into this like position of being in a lesbian relationship, contrasting that with like Bayonetta, right? Who is like the opposite, who was initially assumed to be like some gay icon, right, in a lesbian relationship with Jean, into like the base trad like family mom, right? Like Bayonetta, like it's kind of shocking, like seeing how like people react to Bayonetta like um how weirdly wholesome it is. All right. Like I do think in a lot of ways, like Hornet going against that is going to be a big detriment to the character. It's going to be a big detriment to the brand. And I do expect we're going to see a lot of people like try to defend it, like, oh, but the reality is, people are going to be put off by it for a good reason, assuming that happens. But again, we'll have to wait and see. But I don't think the idea is completely unwarranted.